Good evening and welcome. My name is Abigail Sirabot, and I am the board chair for the Missouri Gateway Green Building Council this year. We're very excited to be partnering with the Society for Marketing Professional Services, St. Louis, this evening. We have a great discussion teed up, but before I get started, I want to share a few announcements. Thank you to our sponsors this evening. So we have VSA, Farnsworth Group, and Reminger Design. Thank you also for our wonderful building host, McCarthy. Our event and annual sponsors are so important to our mission of making every building a green building. So please be in touch with me or any of our staff to learn more about the sponsorship opportunity and the benefits. And as many of you know, the Missouri Gateway Green Building Council is celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. In honor of that anniversary, we've issued a call for drawings for the 25 years of green building coloring book. We're looking for a variety of building types and drawing styles. So please consider submitting a drawing of your favorite green building or interior by the July 20th deadline. We're really excited to see the drawings that are submitted and look forward to sharing the finished product later this year. And as part of our ongoing anniversary celebration, we're planning to give back this year for our member social. On June 26th, we have a workday planned to spruce up the garden at Washington Montessori, which was damaged by the tornado last May. The workday will be followed by a happy hour also hosted by Built and Dirt and David Charles, who's in the room. Our next monthly program will be our annual Green Building Tour. On July 14th, we'll visit the Jeffrey T. Ford Neuroscience Research Building at Washington University School of Medicine, which achieved a LEED Gold certification. And with that, I will let Julia Pluff say a few opening remarks as well from SMPS.
Thank you. Evening, and thank you for coming. My name is Julia Pluff, and I'm with Farnsworth Group. We are a nationwide architecture and engineering firm. I also have the pleasure of being the past president of SMPS. SMPS is a group that brings together architects, engineers, and general contractors for educational programs and networking. So this is right in our wheelhouse. Couple of things we have coming up. We do programs called Coffee Connections. Literally, we meet at a coffee shop, get together and talk about a topic that we think is pertinent to our industry. We do two. We have one in Illinois and one in Missouri. On the 2nd, we'll do one in Illinois, July 2nd. And on July 16th, we'll do one in Missouri. And the topic for July is artificial intelligence. What is your firm doing? How are they using it? Have they set up guardrails for it? Best practices, that kind of thing. So it should be interesting. The other thing that we have going in July is on the 23rd, and it is our 5th annual pickleball tournament. Lisa Jury is the champion from last year. I would encourage you to visit our website. You're welcome to register for any of those programs. You do not have to be a member. And in pickleball, you don't have to be good. You can just show up and have fun, and then we will have some drinks and some networking after. So thank you very much and enjoy the program.
And I'm pleased to now turn over the floor to Nora Knox, the co-founder of Bolt Branch Collective. Nora is joining us from Washington, D.C., and will be moderating our discussion on communicating the value of green buildings. With that, I'll give it to Nora.
All right, thank you. How's my volume? We don't have mics up here, so I just want to make sure. Everyone, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Okay, hi everyone, welcome. Thanks for coming tonight. Thank you to McCarthy for hosting us and to our partners at Missouri Gateway Green Building Council and to the Society for Marketing Professionals, St. Louis, for bringing this program together. I'm Nora Knox. I'm from Bold Branch Collective, and tonight we're here to talk about two things that I care a lot about. The built environment and the art of communication. So right now, the business case for green building is stronger than ever. The global green building market is nearing $650 billion and growing nearly 10% each year. LEED certified buildings can earn up to 31% more in rent than traditional properties. And Harvard studies show that workers in green buildings score 61% higher in cognitive tests. Since buildings account for 40% of global carbon emissions, what we design, build, and operate has a significant impact on climate. But still, many of us have been in meetings where a client says something like, that sounds expensive. and the discussion ends there, which leaves us wondering, why does this keep happening? I think it's because we often treat communication as an afterthought, something that comes after the main work. But communication is often the work. At my organization, we believe that communication is a climate solution. And if we can't bring clients, decision makers, and internal teams along, even the best designed, most sustainable buildings won't get built. So tonight, I'm excited to have a conversation with amazing experts who do this work each day, bringing a different perspective. Would you all like to just go down the row and introduce yourselves?
Sure, I'll start. I am Drew Hustedy, Senior Architect and Sustainability Lead at BSA. I primarily do a lot of healthcare work now. In the past, I did a lot of public work, and that conversation really changes between the two and what that looks like from those perspectives. So communication is very key to my line of work.
My name is Matt Kale. Loud enough?
No more
My
volume.
My name is Matt Kale. I'm with Farnsworth Group. My role is National Program Manager, which doesn't tell you a whole lot about what I do, but basically I've split my career in equal parts of mechanical design, energy modeling, and commissioning. So I do a little bit of all that stuff every day. I've got a passion around real life energy performance in buildings, closing the performance gap, and whatever it takes to get that done. And so a lot of that comes down to communication on the front end and back end and kind of stringing everything together.
I'm Abigail Sirabog. I work at Edward Jones in our branch real estate department. I'm our vendor program manager and also our resident sustainability SME in branch real estate. So working on any green certifications we would do there. Communications is definitely very important for me as well. Being in a financial institution with a lot of folks that really don't know anything about building technicality wise or concept wise, really have to shape that language to be resonating with folks that, need to be able to understand these concepts in a simple way.
Hi, I'm Mary Peterin. I'm a Senior Pre-Construction Director for McCarthy Building Companies. I've been working in construction for about over 25 years, most of that in estimating. So when, we talk about how much does that cost, that's my job. And that's usually me that is the killer of dreams, it seems like. But on the other side, within McCarthy, we just recently have started a sustainability group. So before that, I was actually kind of the unofficial sustainability group for our area here too. So I was helping our projects pursue lead projects. So I know the sustainability side as well.
Thank you. So a little bit about me. I worked at the U.S. Green Building Council for 14 years on the marketing and communications team. I worked closely with rating systems like LEED, WELL, Sites, and True, and I've seen what happens when communication works and when it doesn't. After leaving USGBC this fall, I co-founded Bold Branch Collective with two former marketing colleagues from USGBC. We are a strategic marketing partner for organizations focused on sustainability across the building, energy, and infrastructure sectors. Our goal is to turn technical leadership into strong positioning, new opportunities, and growth. So tonight we'll talk about how communication really happens, not just in theory, but in client meetings and early project conversations when anything is possible. We'll hear strategies from different fields, so we'll all leave better prepared to make our case. So let's get into it. I'd love to start with some honesty because I think it sets the tone for everything we're going to talk about tonight. So just around the room, I'm wondering how many of us have led with sustainability, or some call it the S word, in a client meeting and felt the energy shift, like not in a good way. Yeah, see some hands raised. So a question for the panel, when you talk about your work, do you use the term green building, and is sustainability something you mention directly, or do you describe it in another way? Abigail, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Okay. For us at Jones, again, being in a financial institution, we really have to kind of say, what does the sustainability word mean? And so a few terms we've kind of adopted: stewardship, impact investing, purpose, citizenship. We do actually have a purpose impact area with it's called, working towards a sustainable future. So the word sustainable is used in some of our language, but the term sustainability can be a little daunting and maybe a little bit charged. And so trying to find those neutral words that really appeal to all folks. We've found a lot that if you focus on health and well-being as a benefit and focusing on that ROI for your people and in turn and as a result the planet, that's really helpful. But you have to really find that common language and some of those other words perhaps beyond sustainability.
Great. I was just thinking like a collection of your vocabulary would be awesome to have to
Yeah,
reference.
the financial institution approves.
Yeah.
vocabulary.
Yeah.
Happy to share.
Drew, when we were doing our pre-call, you mentioned that you choose your words very carefully. Can you tell us more about that and what words you pay attention to?
Yeah, absolutely. Sustainability used to be used a lot for us and for myself until you started to realize that everyone has a different definition of it, right? And the moment you say it, their expectation changes of you and the project. And that doesn't necessarily help. Most of the time it was a negative. You want to lead them to a positive outcomes. They have great visions in mind. It's your job, as I would call yourself a fisherman, to fish those visions out and those goals. And oftentimes sustainability is not the word to do it. Sometimes green building can be, but ultimately as the expert, we like to, in the room, we try to encourage them to bring out what's most impactful to them. They're the ones that are envisioning this project. They're the ones that are trying to make this dream a reality. You don't know what that dream is. It's just a building. It's just a square footage. It's just a program. But there's so much more that it means down to the occupant experience. Could be a human health thing, branding sometimes. How does that connect and how does that establish? So sustainability, defining it in 100 different ways is troublesome. Pinpoint the vocabulary, pinpoint what their values are. So.
Thanks. Okay, so Matt, once a project is delivered, how do you prioritize the transition from execution to storytelling? Do you have best practices for leveraging past success stories?
Yeah, one thing we've focused on a lot and been what I think is a pretty successful story is
Eric,
more volume.
Yeah, you might need a mic. More volume.
Move to the
Very
front.
good. So what we try to do is as we're developing deliverables, all the way along the way, we're also thinking about selling the next project or winning the next interview. And I think it's sort of there's two nice things that happen there. One thing is you sort of get your entrepreneurial spirit going as you're developing a great rendering, or in my case, maybe it's a great energy dashboard, that kind of stuff. And then imagine that being a client deliverable that you're proud to put in your slide deck. You go in there. So if you're kind of making the project better at the same time, you're tapping into that front of the project energy that everybody's so excited about. Oh, we got a new one. We're going to do this one the right way, and we're going to do all this stuff. So I think that's a really key thing to keep sort of that through line of the project alive. When you're in the grind halfway through it, you can sort of tap back into that. Oh, that day we won the project. That was the best day of the project, right? And there's a lot of days between that and the end, right, that you have to get through. So that's something we talk about a lot.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. So it sounds like a lot of this involves translation and taking something, valuable and finding the right way to present it to each person. So let's talk about how you figure out what matters to someone. So Drew, you said you connect sustainability to a client's mission and values, and that you work with them to understand what matters to them and how their project can show that. Can you share the story about your public judicial building client where the sustainability goals were important, but you had to change how you talked about them?
This is a very interesting story and I'll never forget it. And it was the very biggest lesson I've learned in my career regarding this topic, and especially talking to the client about it. It was the second project with an existing client. It was their largest project, and we were very excited to go after it. It was a public client, and it's a civic building. It was a courthouse. This is a 150-year-old building. So it was very impactful. It was community identity, kind of like identifier. It was a brand in the county. The interview. we started talking about this topic and they said, we don't want to talk about sustainability. We don't want to hear that. In fact, I think it was that year or the year before, they cut all codes related to sustainability. All of them. That same conversation, they asked if we could do geothermal mechanical systems. Because it saved them money on previous projects. That was okay. Your important factor is obviously money, but it's long-term operational money. And you can sell that to voters and you can win another, election cycle. But you're looking after the voters, right? You're looking at the long term. That's what we used. And in fact, that kind of defined a lot of the decisions on the project after that, from the wall envelope to the building materials. Like, we're not going to put up something that's going to be torn down in 20 years, right? So that, big lesson.
Yeah,
Fun story.
yeah, that's great. So Abigail, how do you relate green building strategies to mission and values in relation to LEED and WELL?
Yeah, so interestingly, our Edward Jones has really gotten a pitch lately that health impacts wealth, if you can imagine, right? If your health is not good, you're going to have less money to invest with Edward Jones. So our CEO has even called us a health and wealth organization lately. So I'm trying to really tap into that angle and really lead with that health. And how does the health piece impact the colleague experience and also the client experience in our branches? We have over 15,000 branches across North America, so we have a lot of real estate to impact people. And how, that's also leads to our competitive advantage with some of these topics. So I really have found that the mission and vision of this health platform that we're taking recently with Jones has been very valuable for me. Not using the term green building per se, because that term's still a little scary, but let's talk about a healthy building, the air quality, the materials we choose, how that helps your experience in the space, helps you be more productive. Those have all been really good mission and vision kind of aspects to tap into lately. And we do participate in the Well at Scale program through Well Building. That rating system for now has been more of a opportunity with the health aspects. I know LEED's catching up, especially in V5. So I'm excited to see what LEED V5 aspects I can get in there. We've done a lot of best practices with LEED, but leading with that concept of health and the built environment has really been valuable for us.
I'm curious, did you see a shift in health awareness or priorities after COVID?
Yes and no. I would say we actually stayed home a long time at Jones after COVID. So by the time we were coming back, there were definitely a lot of cleaning policies, things like that came in. I think more people were aware. You had a hyper awareness of the risk of COVID, right, and some of these diseases, right, when you're coming into your building. I don't think a lot of people thought about that much before COVID. So there were definitely some policy shifts, but overall, by the time we came back, it was more about how can we proactively help you, not just prevent you from getting COVID.
Yeah, more holistically.
Yeah.
Mary, can you speak to discovery and asking questions? And maybe if you listen to hear something specific or do research before a conversation?
Probably a little bit of both. Definitely a lot of questions. When we talked about what words do you use, I'm using all the words. I'm trying to get everything on the table. What exactly are you looking for? And many times, our clients, whoever we're talking to, they might not know. Many of our clients actually are very on the forefront of the sustainability. Many of them have goals of net zero. They own their own buildings. They have that interest in energy conservation. They have certain things that they are very wanting to do because they're operating their building. They're going to be living in their building. So many times we're actually trying to sell what we can do for them. But so many times it's also someone has decided what their sustainability is, but that's not necessarily who we're working with. So that translating
Another
for them.
person in the
Yes,
organization.
yeah. So we might be helping the project manager understand what their bosses might be, wanting them to do based on what their sustainability directives are. And working through that way of what does that mean as far as cost of the project? What does that mean for everything and how the the building will be designed and operated. So, and then of course, it's my job to help them figure out how much they have for everything and balance all of that with what they've got to build for their project. So.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So Matt, sort of building off of the comment from the last question in the context of business development, how do you translate success into a compelling narrative? And like what elements of a project are most effective at demonstrating value to new stakeholders and customers?
I think the best one that I've found so far, the generic version of it, is if you can have a custom metric for a client, like something that speaks to performance of their project that they're building and also somehow translates numbers into their values or mission statement or something like that. If you can put that up on a screen and say, this might not be the metric for you, client, but what we're going to do is develop a custom way to champion your own success. A great example of this was we were working for a healthcare client and we asked them, what does sustainability mean to you? A lot of the things that y'all are talking about here, how do you appear successful to your peers and to your bosses, project manager? How do we let it be known that you're doing a great job and help you grow your career and feel empowered, right? And they came back with one of the most creative ones I ever heard was a healthcare environment. They wanted to know how many BTUs of energy they use per bed night. So they wanted kids out of there healthier, faster in a children's hospital, and they wanted to use less energy to do it. And those are two things that are like super easy to get your hands around. And I've never would have thought of to divide that one by that one, right? And you just put that up on the screen, you talk about it all day, make a dashboard about it, send it to the execs, and it's just like off and running. So, but you have to have the two different conversations. What are we trying to accomplish and why do you want to accomplish it? You can mash that stuff up. That's like a perfect slide deck for the next presentation, right?
Yeah, I love that. So we have talked about how what you say and how you say it matters, framing, language, meeting people where their values are, but timing is also important. And I've heard people say that they had the right conversation at the wrong time and missed their chance. So I'm wondering if there's a best time in a project to have a conversation and or a worst time, and how do you know when the opportunity is there? So I'd like to start with you, Mary, since you're in pre-construction, which seems like the most important stage. So can you confirm when these conversations work best and what do you pay attention to?
It's the earlier the better. It's always earlier the better. And I know you guys are, might be scared of words. Like for me, I just have to find it out early. That's when, if there is cost impact, you can minimize it. You can get it in the project. You can help them make informed decisions. I mean, you can do things later. It costs more money the later you push something down the road. So it's always earlier the better. And again, that does come to asking probing questions because they might not be telling you everything you need to know early when they're saying, I don't want sustainability. Oh, but I want geothermal. Well, so you might have to really go down the list of different, different things within the lead checklist and pick and choose some things of, hey, what are you thinking about this? Or well building, hey, are you thinking about this? Not frame it in different systems per se, but like actual tangible things for them so that they can say, yes, that would be good for me to do, or, no, whatever. Having those early conversations is absolutely important.
Yeah, that's great. So Abigail, can you speak to the benefits of an integrated design approach, maybe compared to a building that's already finished? And then share, I think you have a story of a financial owner that you can share. That would be great.
Yeah, so if you can imagine, I've kind of seen all the spectrum at Jones, from people who really care, people who don't care and are unaware. And so coming into the branch real estate space, I've been there about a year now. So some projects I'm trying to certify after they've already been designed and built, which is not impossible, but definitely harder. And so, they thought about some of the principles of LEED and well, but not really that holistic approach is definitely is preferred. And then on the other flip side, I have a financial advisor in Nebraska who came to us with the passion of sustainability, and he wants to do a net zero LEED Platinum branch that is also well certified. And so it's just the polarity is really interesting to see the audience differences there. And so that integrated design approach with the FA owner, he had the architect, the lead consultant, the engineers at the table day one, whereas, also trying to go backwards and trying to uncover, get LOAs from contractors and engineers for projects that's already been completed. Some of these are really daunting tasks if you don't have that proactive approach and really have those people at the table day one.
So is it possible to
It
do
is possible.
Yeah.
It's very difficult, but it's possible.
Yeah. And is there a point when it's too late?
I, for just that one project experience, I would say if you can look at a floor plan and just say, I don't think this project meets it, it might be not worth pursuing. Luckily, this project had used a lot of the well principles. I could just see it on the design. And so we kept going with it, and we are going to hopefully get a certification for it. But it definitely takes probably, maybe a whole time and a half more, I would think, than just doing these steps along the way instead of trying to catch up at the end. So, yeah.
Does anyone have any stories about maybe a time when you suggested an idea that didn't work on one project, but then it succeeded on the next?
Yeah, I think there's sort of akin to the story we were telling earlier. There's you can go into, I guess, let me back up a little bit. One of the reasons I like spending part of my time being a commissioning agent as opposed to designing or doing other stuff is we sort of get the opportunity to sneak things in at the end. If it's just a good idea, we just go ahead and do it. Don't tell anybody. Right? I mean, not in a bad way, but I think everybody would agree if we could do the same thing for less energy, let's just do it. We don't really talk about it. It's just a moral imperative. Like, it shouldn't even be a discussion. Like, right, if I can do the same thing right now and do it more efficiently, let's do it. So things like chiller plant sizing or little things like that, you can take the conversation of, hey, I didn't really get that sequence that I wanted into the last project, so the plant doesn't work in the most optimal way. But what if I volunteer to the mechanical engineer, hey, would you mind if I wrote the sequence for you or suggested one? And now it's in there in the front, and I sort of did an inception thing, right? And now it's their idea, and now everybody loves it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what a great sequence that the engineer came up with, right? So that's sort of
I
a
love
version
that.
of your question, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. Okay, so I'm also noticing that timing is about trust, and having a strong enough relationship to have an honest conversation, and maybe present ideas. And then it also sounds like we have to act before decisions are final. So building trust also means knowing what kind of proof works. So let's take some time to talk about that. So these days we have amazing access to good data, like energy savings, rent premiums, cognitive scores, carbon impact. But does this data really convince clients, or is something else more important? Anyone want to speak to that?
I can. We don't do a lot of convincing, I would say, because it's either they're coming to us with what they want already, or they might not know, but they know in a different way, and we have to get that from them. So, but you go to the trust thing, and that's completely key in having those conversations at the beginning and being honest about it, like just putting it all out there. Because if you don't have that, you don't have anything. So yeah, it's really, again, we're not really selling that. We're still more so selling ourselves for our client, because many of them have requirements for us to be at. So there's that side of it. But then, but having those early conversations, if they're holding back because they're not trusting the other players at the table, I mean, that goes to the whole, we're going to get down further down, and then we're going to have changes later that then again cost more money. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I've found that it's really, some clients, when you're lucky, you'll have a client that really cares about the terms, the carbon, the energy, the occupant's experience many times. I always start a conversation with why. Even down to the silliest OAC meeting, like, why are we here? The purpose. Because they're, you want them to kind of script the story a little bit, right? And the first conversation, even, they don't trust me. Well, I should say they trust me to know exactly what I'm doing when it comes to carbon and energy. And then most of my clients assume, or they trust me and my team that we know enough of what we're doing, that we're experts, that we're going to deliver the best project or the best potential project that they can have here. And so to them, it's not like, well, thank you for telling me the story about the carbon on the project. I knew you guys were going to do that. Right?
That's why they came to you.
That's why they came to us. It's about, well, are you going to be an advocate on your client, right? Are you going to allow them to tell a great story after you're gone off the project, right? That's what I found is very impactful to them. It means the most. And honestly, it brings out the highest potential in the project many times.
So for ROI, is it money? Does money represent something else like risk, trust, control? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, ROI is a fun one because everybody cares about money. We're in America. And they want to pay off. They want to see and realize the benefit of what we put down on paper. I'm not, Frank Gehry, I'm not going to draw up a piece of art and deliver them a piece. That's not what they're looking for many times. They want the best building. They want a good investment. They want you to put something in reality for them that they're going to use and get the best from it for the longest term. So when I get asked the ROI question, or many times it's me asking them, what is your right ROI, right? It's a tricky question because they're going to say as soon as possible. Or if you paint the picture well, you communicate it like, well, we can deliver a great building over 20 years. Or is that too long, or do you want to pull that back? Do you need to realize these quicker? And many times it's, I've found 10 years is the magic number if you can get it under 10 years, which makes us as architects and experts stretch a lot. But that's a magic number for them. I have rarely fallen on a client outside of the geothermal client many times that is going to be at that project for that 20, 30 years to see everything come to fruition, right? It's 5 to 10 years and then it's off to somebody else. And is it going to be impactful to them? Will they care? So their ROI, they want to see it faster, right? As fast as they can, but it doesn't have to happen immediately. That'd be nice,
Yeah, thanks. Abigail, do you have thoughts on framing and language as they relate to internal conversations?
Yeah, being a financial institution, ROI is definitely top of mind for Amber Jones. And interestingly, if you can find the solutions that have a decent ROI and that also are sustainable, that's the sweet spot. So an example we did was we rolled out LED lighting initiatives across North America for our branches. And they instead of leading with the sustainability measures and which is we would all love, I'm sure, we led with the savings, right? And if you put this money up and we get this LED in, your payback will be, your ROI is this. I think it was about 1.5 years or 2 years for each branch. And then they were able to recoup savings from there. And so that case was really crucial for financial advisors to opt in. That was the other interesting thing. They wasn't required. They had to opt into the program. So we did have a really good success rate when we started to lead with that ROI and that messaging about savings. And also, and by the way, it's sustainable, right? And sometimes you just have to have that kind of communication if that's the way the client is.
Yeah, that's great. Matt, is there a stat or a study you found yourself coming back to for one that lands?
Yeah, I think touching on the ROI conversation a little bit, I guess in my opinion, like one of the Achilles heels of our industry is we do this accounting thing where we go construction budget, operational budget, right? And that's convenient for the accountants and the operators to understand well funding sources and all that thing, but it's like really useless when you're talking about a building. It's like there's this weird arbitrary point when there's that money, and they don't talk to each other, right? And so I think if you can zoom back on that conversation or find ways to poke holes in that wall, then all of a sudden the ROI over most buildings we're building now are going to last at least 50 years, right? At minimum, probably some of them a lot longer. I work for a lot of institutional clients, and I'm going into buildings that are built in the 60s, and they're like, let's give it another 50 years, right? Let's keep the bones, right? So if you can find a way to zoom back on that conversation, it's all of a sudden makes a design decision like a geothermal system or something like that, like an absolute no-brainer. If all of a sudden the payback is like, I have my construction budget, which is X million dollars, but that's like the tip of the iceberg compared to my operational budget, right? And you can like look at all the stuff below the surface of the water and then bring that into the conversation with every decision you make. Those kind of metrics tend to persuade people, right? Like financial institutions, because they get it, right? You're looking at the whole iceberg and not just the top.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we've discussed what works, and then I'd also like to take some time to talk about what doesn't, since most of us have seen things fall apart, and I think it's important to understand why. So Abigail, my question for you is, where does the green building conversation usually break down?
I would say for us, that I'm sure this is not uncommon, but just saying, hey, I want to get this building certified, that doesn't really resonate with some people it does, others it doesn't. And so I think it's really about that business case, the ROI, are there reputational impacts of that building if we get certification? Sometimes that's hard to quantify. Sometimes you're going to be told no. And for me, it's been kind of going back to the drawing board a few times, trying to advocate for green buildings at Edward Jones. But I found that, trying to build that momentum, kind of the slow burn, really does help. And finding your advocates internally or with your clients even, who needs to be at the table to really talk about that. That's been helpful. But just a certification alone is not really appealing right now from my perspective. They want to see why, what's it do for me, right? What's in it for me? And that's been really a good selling point to try to find that answer and then leave with that answer.
That's great. So Matt, thinking about the operational budget that you just talked about, do you think that the separation in roles, architect, engineer, contractor, owner, operations and maintenance can cause problems? And does the message change depending on who you're talking to? And how can we build stronger connections between those different roles?
Yeah, I mean, you have to change it. You have to build a project culture to get anything done. You have to trust the people in your room to do their best job, the best version of themselves in the role that they're performing for that project. And if you don't do that, then you're just not going to be able to collaborate. You're never going to get to any of these higher level communication styles that we're talking about, right? So.
Yourself?
What's that?
That's our picket ball.
Make it quiet, make it louder.
Sorry, I couldn't hear what you said, but no, I think it's really important to shift our mindset to like a collaboration culture and not a documentation culture, because we're all trained to like write the email so that there's a record of everything we ever said. So we're all just covering our own rear ends from a liability standpoint, right? But if you have a pick up the phone culture, like we're going to have this conversation, we're going to sort it out in real time. We're going to talk through what the metric is or what the next meeting is supposed to be about or the why are we here thing. And then we can go write the emails afterwards and still be diligent about stuff. But I think if you get that kind of collaboration into your projects, you can do a lot more in a shorter time.
Add on, design build is a great solution to some of that, because then the contractor and the designer are really working hand in hand for the common goal. But I will say the owner sets the tone. They are really the ones that drive how that project operates. And you take sustainability out of it, any job, any project, that owner is really setting the tone. It goes back to that trust. It goes back to the communication, because your contractor and your architect and engineers can all work really well together, but the owner is not communicating with the team. It still is a breakdown.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, so I'd like to focus on the challenges for one more question, because there's something happening outside this room that I think everyone is dealing with, even if we don't like to talk about it. So we all know ESG has become politically charged. Some big companies are quietly stepping back, others sometimes openly from public sustainability promises. So I'm wondering if this is coming up in your conversations, and how are you handling it? Anyone?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you'll get a big question, right? Which is aimed at all this stuff like, hey, I own and operate a hospital. How do I electrify the whole campus? And you're like, well, okay, like let's slow down a minute. Like, how do we get rid of, you can't just tomorrow get rid of fossil fuels in a hospital and still have patient care, right? But the intent is great. I love where they're going with it, you know? So I mean, I don't know if you all hear similar things, but there's like big picture stuff like that going on. That's not always connected to a project, but you still have to take that moment to be like, okay, what's driving this? What can we actually do? What's achievable, right?
Yeah, that's great. So Drew, your courthouse story fits here too. You know, sometimes the value is real, but the label is a liability.
Yep.
Have you seen this happen in other situations?
Even personal.
Yeah,
You know, I'm from the other side of the Mississippi originally, Clinton County, and they're very conservative, right? And they'll be politically charged when you mention the word sustainability or energy efficiency. You know, you'll talk to a farmer and they don't want to hear that, but then next month they'll put solar panels on their barn. You know, and it becomes very difficult to have the conversation, right? I think, you know, I've given a lot of thought with the courthouse thing too. I think the one characteristic, really one skill that we need to develop as an industry is really strong empathy to understand that they're just as knowledgeable as you are many times. It's getting it out of them, right? And being able to understand that you're their best friend, right? You're going to be the best partner they're going to have in this project, and this team is going to make the best thing happen. But if you go in guns blazing, you know, and you should do this, you know, this is going to benefit your project many times. That trust becomes key because you're now gambling with distrust and looking like you're too much, right? So I feel like empathy and understanding where the others are at and what's really impactful to them. So the courthouse is part of that. It's like, man, I wish I wouldn't use the S word. I wish I would have listened to them.
Yeah.
Kind of read the room, but it still turned out great.
Yeah.
You know, we still made a
Worked out.
successful story. So
Yeah, that's great. I'm curious if it ever feels like you're hiding something, like does changing the language, you know, feel honest? Or, you know, like any thoughts on that?
I would say it's interesting because, we used to use the term ESG, right? I think with Jones, even before ESG was kind of out of the popularity, we kind of doubled down on rooting to our mission and our values and our core concepts at Ever Jones. And ironically, like those still are in our external reporting today. And so they haven't really fluctuated with ESG or non-ESG. And so I think just for me and for maybe owner perspectives and thinking about your clients, like if you can root in their kind of longevity and their core values that they're always going to have or they always have had, like start with that and go from there. What can you dig out of there? And like you said, being a fisherman, right? Pull out those concepts from those things that are always going to be there, ESG or not. And that's really helped us.
Yeah, great. Okay, so let's end on something forward-looking, so that we, you know, are not just understanding the problem, but also leaving with something. So I have two questions. The first is if you could change one thing about how our industry talks about the value of green building, whether it's with clients, partners, or within your own company, what would you do? So I'd love to hear from all of you on this. Could be just like one sentence, very brief.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna feed off of
Yeah,
what we've already been talking about. Really, it is, I think it's a lot of asking questions instead of the pushing down. It's the probing. I do like the empathy. I like that, putting yourself in other people's shoes. And that way you can better communicate to people individually, because we're all different, but a lot of us all have a lot of the same values. I mean, we all pay electric or, bills. They all go up. Everybody wants them to go down, so putting yourself in your client's shoes of what is important to them and asking the right questions rather than maybe pushing it, because that's not always the right way to go.
Sounds great. Yeah. Mine, it just, again, being in a financial institution where not many people know about buildings and building systems, if we can reduce the technical speak sometimes, especially in some of those initial high level meetings with leaders, right? And if you're leadership teams, your client, you're meeting with them, they're not going to understand what all these complicated words mean. So, maybe next time if you're phrasing some kind of communication, like think of it like, could anybody read this and understand it. And I've started working with human capital in the past 6 months or so on this health angle, and they've challenged me many times, and I've always tried to do that anyway. But even just like, hey, this has got to be plainer. And any of our associates need to be able to read this statement and understand what the impact of lighting is. And so really think about that next time as you're crafting some of those communications.
Yeah, I'll focus on my company. I think if I could give them one sentence, I'd be like, let's make database decisions because we need to make good data so we can make good database decisions, right? Like, let's not just look at data. Let's actually make sure that we're focusing on developing good metrics and looking at the right things.
Let's say, start with the book, tell the story, build the story. Don't get to the end of the story before you start the first chapter.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. And so the last question is, if you could share a practical tip for everyone in this room, who wants to improve at this, like in our daily work, what's like a very quick takeaway?
If you can talk about every decision in dollars, do that. It's really hard, but yeah.
Yeah.
Have a good pre-construction person on board.
Mine would be find your advocates in your organization, because, and it might not be a traditional advocate, it might be a human capital person or an operations person, but if you can keep spreading the word and spreading the steam around and getting that momentum across the organization, that will only help you in the future.
That's a really good one. I would say start with trust too. Focus on trust, focus on that relationship.
Yeah, great. Okay, so thank you guys so much. This was such a good conversation. My takeaway is that the case for green building is strong, but the challenge is knowing how to read the room, and when to lead with cost savings or other benefits, and then when to plant a seed and follow up. So thanks, you guys.
And I'll close it real quick. So thank you, Nora, Mary, Drew, Matt, for an excellent discussion. And I hope everyone who attended tonight can take away an action item or an idea to start implementing in your own work. Thanks to SMPS for being such a great partner on our event. And thank you again for host McCarthy and our sponsors, BSA, Farnsworth Group, and Remiger Design. Thank you all for attending this evening. And that concludes our formal programming, but we still have more food, and feel free to network. Should I have some questions?
Do we want to do a Q&A? Yeah.
We can open up for questions. Does anybody have questions? Okay.
I think somebody mentioned it before about how an institution may have a decarbonization goal, and everybody intends to open some project with decarbonization in mind, or sustainability, or whatever that institution's goals are. And we're entering this lovely phase where, despite everybody's best intentions, we find that once we get the lovely pre-con people on board, we're hundreds of millions over budget. And then it just kind of seems to me like the whole thing falls apart right then. And the people making decisions about the program and what needs to go in just completely throw the institution-wide sustainability and decarbonization goals out the window. Like that, we said that was our standard and that's what we're doing. But now we just need to make this thing go. So code minimum. How do we deal with that?
I got a good example.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Go.
Yeah. So let's say you want a client, they bring up early, I want no fossil fuels, I want to electrify, right? And then they go, wait a minute, that's going to cost a lot. I can't afford heat pumps. I don't have that in the budget. A very easy way to carry that idea forward is to think about, hey, even if you have to put in boilers now, because that's what's going to burn fossil fuel, because that's what we can afford in the budget. In 20 years, it's not going to be the case. And those boilers are going to last a lot less time in the building, right? So all you have to do at that point is make bigger piping, make bigger pumps, and be ready for ground source heat pumps, right? Be ready to put that new technology in when the price point comes to it. And that's oftentimes in the 20 years into the life of the building, right? So just be thinking about, if I was able to do that, then I can do everything else up to this point, and it's just like a little bit bigger pipe, a little bit bigger pump, doesn't cost anything. But again, take their idea and get as close as you can to it, and don't worry about the fact that you have to do this. You don't have to be great to be good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I actually had a client that is their goal, net zero. They went all electric in their building. So they were able to they got the geothermal, they got the heat pumps, they got everything in there. They could not get the photovoltaics. But we put everything in for them to get them later. So it's a matter of preparing for that because it's way cheaper to do it when you're building the building than later. So at least as long as you can at least plan for it, because now they're actually looking at this a couple years later and they're actually looking at adding them. Again, it might be coming from a different budget. Maybe it helps. So, don't give up everything. Hopefully you can get some things in there. And the other option, and I know it's not easy, it's not definitely not something you want to do on your mechanical system, but for certain things, like work with your pre-con person to identify things as alternates. Maybe it doesn't look good on paper for your whole budget, but maybe there's something, maybe you get a good buy and maybe some things come in, or maybe you can go to some of your contractors and they can give you some cost saving ideas. And when you're doing buyout, you can save some money and maybe you can put it somewhere else that you weren't thinking you had enough money for. So give yourselves, hopefully your construction manager is working. It does make a little bit extra work on the design team to draw those up or talk about those, but hopefully you can give some options for them as well that maybe you can pick and choose later on.
Any other questions? Yes.
Another question, on the justification of projects topics, are you all seeing people that are like receptive to life cycle cost analysis and total cost of ownership as a way to say like, this is the best longer term option versus just looking at simple payback?
My 13 years of doing this, I've only run into one instance, with a recent client that chose the most expensive upfront and long-term option because they didn't know how to maintain the other ones. And they didn't want to go through the training. They're old school. So at least we went through the exercise of understanding. And I think it educated them a little bit. And, as times change, things for them change as well. Almost always though. It's like for them, it's very similar to like buying a car sometimes, they expect it's going to be a great product, but they want to compare it a couple times. They want to see, like I bought a hybrid last year as an anecdote, right? And the first thing I did was, well, if I buy a hybrid, how does that pay off? In total cost of ownership, it's going to pay off in 4 years, right? Which is really great compared to its gas counterpart. And loved it, right? But that's kind of how the client thinks. Many times is it's going to be simple, it's going to be tangible, and realize it, right? It does get a little weird. I don't know how you guys feel about it, not to add on, but when you bid, like I have a recent example of total cost of ownership in the framing of experience. In the way of experience and less money, as it relates to like lead certification and point chasing. And it was a vet school for a major university in Indiana doing a sustainability assessment on their requirements. And they basically said, this project worked amazing for lead. This one didn't. We point chased probably 50% of the points. And it was a vet school. And they're like, why do we need bike racks at a vet school? They're bringing horses here, right? And to them, it was just like, we just paid $50,000 for bike racks that aren't going to see a subjective return on investment. And I didn't know how to quantify that, right? It was very subjective. It's like in 10 years, do I come back for a survey? How many people use the bike racks? But you almost have to think like that sometimes, right? Is this going to be worth it beneficially to them? Is this going to be long-term outside of just the cost and operation sometimes? So if that helps.
A question. I don't know if I'm talking loud enough, but you all work at fairly big companies across the country. And so you're not involved in every project that's going out the door. You're talking to the choir here. How are you dealing with internal resistance in your companies? How are you getting those folks to come along and talk to their clients about this in a proactive way? Is that something you're dealing with? And if so, have you been able to overcome it in any way to bring folks along to engage so that it becomes a portfolio-wide solution?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think, but one of the things that is undebatable is that USGBC has been successful in their mission of market transformation, right? You didn't used to have floor score on every piece of carpet. You didn't used to have VOC reporting on every piece, like within my career, right? So things like that are very easy to scale in an organization. We just go update our spec, and if it costs the same thing and it's a more socially responsible product and clients like it, just put it in there and make it super easy for folks. Most folks are happy to do this kind of stuff if it's equivalent and it's not sneaking in greenwashing or anything like that. And I think if you do that over time and just communicate everybody, hey, we're taking at every term, we're taking the low hanging fruit and we're just making that standard practice. Again, this stuff, oftentimes it's just a moral imperative. If it's easy and you have to do it, then why are we even talking about it? It should already be done. I think if you communicate that out to your teams and like, look, we've done the template, it's ready, it's good. This is the new spec, this is the new policy, this is the new owner's project requirement, whatever. Then you can get a lot of energy behind that, in my experience.
I would just add, so this is more from a well perspective than a lead one, but there's a lot of things in well that are more interdisciplinary. So there's features that are security and BCP based. There's human capital features. There's cafe related features. So I've had to, pretty much advocate and educate across all those different disciplines to help them understand in that plain speak, like, why is this important? Why are we pursuing these things? And what does it mean? And so, but now I have all these branches in Edward Jones that understand what well is, even if it's just a high level, and why is it important and what is it doing for our people? And so that's helped me, like, getting those feelers out, maybe not in our traditional just design and construction departments, but elsewhere in our organization too, to really gain that momentum you're looking for.
Yeah, for us, because we're a national company, we have many offices on the West Coast, and they're obviously always ahead. Even though we're headquartered here, they're always pushing the envelope west. So for us, it really becomes a push down from the top down, because this is required out here. It's coming your way. Get ready for it, and we, as far as selling, we're like, as I had talked about earlier, we have to sell it to our clients most of the time. So it's, hey, do we have this experience? Can I pull this from another office, So we're constantly talking to our other regions and pulling anything we can that helps sell ourselves and our expertise, as well as using that as a push down from the top to, anyone that's in my role here in Central, that they're saying the same type of thing because it's important to us as a company.
But I would probably say, in my experience, to overcome those hurdles, you gotta be persistent. You gotta make it really easy. My old mentor, the president of the company I used to work with, a great piece of advice when it came to leadership, even of this topic, which is, the captain of the ship points the direction, but the ship never gets there unless the crew goes there. And so one of the things I've always pushed for is good mentorship, but start from the ground up, plant the seeds. Many times the younger staff are so ambitious. They have these great visions. It's like, that's their biggest strength, take advantage of that. And the more that kind of grows, that culture kind of grows positively, the more you're almost forcing others to be part of that culture. They want to be part of that culture. They want to be part of the team. That's important to the team. So it's baby steps, persistent baby steps. But gosh, I would say basically build up those that are very passionate. Give them a voice.
Thank you all very much. This has been outstanding. I'd like to offer a phrase for you, Abigail. And Edward Jones is near and dear. Our son is a financial advisor, excellent office, but green can be green. Okay.
There you go.
And I had the privilege of designing Alberici headquarters, 2004 with John Alberici. And it was an amazing experience. And he related to me afterwards. We've kept in touch over the years. And he said, I save $50,000 in landscape costs every year because it's xeriscape. It takes care of itself. And I save 75,000 in energy costs because we put in such a good system, which by the way, was a basic system, just improved. So he could lead by example. He didn't create an exotic mechanical system. That's $125,000 a year. So now, after 22 years, that's $2.75 million he's saved. So that speaks volumes, I think. And so that's one point. The other thing is the highest salary per the highest dollar per square foot of a building is the salary. And if you have a healthy building and the absentee rate goes down, you're just so much better off. So I mean, again, we're preaching to the choir, but just it's important. And also, I think about the term "just do it." We were talking about just kind of sneak things in. It's like, okay, if you don't want to go through all the paperwork, I know how to orient the building at least. That's not going to cost you a thing. We'll work with the sun. Okay, so, but at any rate, it's just a lot of what you're talking about is great, solid design for architecture and for energy design. So I thank you all for everything you've given us tonight.